What's up? What's up? What's up, everybody? Welcome back. Welcome back. What's up? What's up? This Dominican Republic story. It's been a while. We got to update the story with Sudiksha that went to California, Dominican Republic, and is missing. We got to update the story. It's been a while. And I don't officially have notifications. I got a 30-minute one, so if you guys could help me out with notifications, I'd appreciate that by hitting the like button and subscribing. And what day is it today? I think this was posted yesterday. Yesterday was considered day 9 of search, so today must be day 10 of search. Let me play this little clip while I get set up here. Okay. Still missing. And a couple of new details to talk about with this story. And the last person that saw Sudiksha.
Hey, Nate.
Hey, Charlie, good morning. So we're outside the Rio Republica Resort, which is where Sudiksha Konanki was last seen more than 2 weeks ago. I want to show, before the helicopter goes out of sight, my photographer, Doug, if you can pan up. Search teams continue their work today with aerial assets as well as teams on the ground. But I mentioned just about 100 yards behind me is where Konanki was last seen, and we're learning more about the man that she was last seen with, who is now identified as Joshua Riibe of Iowa. He was interviewed by Loudoun County detectives on Thursday and Dominican authorities on Wednesday. And our colleague Brian Yennis was able to obtain the transcript from that interview. And in that interview, Riibe explained to authorities that he met Konanki that night. They were kissing in the ocean when they were swimming after meeting and drinking at the beach or at the bar earlier that night. They got hit by a big wave and were taken out to sea. And then he tried towing Konanki back to the beach. He says the last time that he saw her, she was in knee-deep water, and he asked if she was okay, but he didn't hear her response because he was vomiting up seawater. It was a nearly 4-hour interview with Dominican authorities. He was asked 50 questions, refused to answer 8 of them, including how he felt about Konanki's disappearance and if he reported their experience on the beach to authorities. Riibe's parents tell Fox News, quote, despite his full willingness to cooperate, Josh has been detained under irregular conditions and subjected to extensive questioning. This situation has raised serious concern within his family. Meanwhile, I mentioned the search continues with 300 agents in the water and on land. They're also using drones with artificial intelligence to detect objects in the water. Now, I want to show you one more thing at the Rio Republica Resort. If I can ask my...
Hey, he got a girlfriend? Does he got a girlfriend? Oh, man, homeboy is pimping. Well, I shouldn't say that. It's kind of... But you know what I mean, though. Oh, it doesn't look good for him. It doesn't look good, but let's hear that again. Hold on.
Hey, Nate.
Hey, Charlie, good morning. So we're outside the Rio Republica Resort, which is where Sudiksha Konanki was last seen more than 2 weeks ago. I want to show, before the helicopter goes out of sight, my photographer, Doug, if you can pan up. Search teams continue their work today with aerial assets as well as teams on the ground. But I mentioned just about 100 yards behind me is where Konanki was last seen, and we're learning more about the man that she was last seen with, who is now identified as Joshua Riibe of Iowa. He was interviewed by Loudoun County detectives on Thursday and Dominican authorities on Wednesday. And our colleague Brian Yennis was able to obtain the transcript from that interview. And in that interview, Riibe explained to authorities that he met Konanki that night. They were kissing in the ocean when they were swimming after meeting and drinking at the beach or at the bar earlier that night. They got hit by a big wave and were taken out to sea. And then he tried towing Konanki back to the beach. He says the last time that he saw her, she was in knee-deep water, and he asked if she was okay, but he didn't hear her response because he was vomiting up seawater. It was a nearly 4-hour...
So he just left this lady? That's what doesn't make sense to me. That doesn't make sense to me. Okay, let's say all that stuff happened. He's seen leaving like at 10 o'clock on video, and he never called police. He never said, oh my God, emergency, this is what happened. It doesn't make any sense. It does not make any sense. Help me out with the likes button, please, guys. No notifications, all right? So the timeline, okay, March 3rd, 2025, Konanki and 5 females arrived in Punta Cana, Dominican Republic, for a spring break trip, staying at the Rio Republica Hotel, which we've covered previously. There's been like all these horrible stories supposedly that's come out of this place. And there's also been people that have previously drowned at this, around this resort. We'll talk about that in a bit. So March 3rd, March 5th, 3:38 p.m., Konanki made a Venmo transaction labeled Coco Bungo, suggesting plans to visit the Coco Bungo nightclub, known for extravagant parties. So maybe she went there, maybe she didn't. I don't know. That's new. Early hours of March 6, 2025, around 3:30 a.m., surveillance footage captured Konanki and her friends in the hotel lobby consuming beverages. At approximately 3:55 a.m., the group moved to Bar Macau at a hotel bar. At 4:17 a.m., 8 individuals, including Konanki, were seen heading toward the beach. At 4:50 a.m., Konanki was observed walking on the beach outside the resort. The morning of March 6, 5:55 a.m., surveillance footage showed 5 women and 1 man returning from the beach. Konanki was not among them. At 9 a.m., which previously I had 10 a.m., but it says here 9 a.m., a man is seen that was seen earlier with Konanki re-entered the hotel alone. Okay, and then at 4 p.m. on March 6th, later that day, Konanki's friend reported her missing. Weird. Joshua Riibe, yeah, I'll show you a picture in a minute. He's in the thumbnail, but it's not really a clear photo. And his family, by the way, his family said that he wouldn't hurt a fly. He would not do anything like this. He would not hurt her.
Okay, but he didn't hear her response because he was they got hit by a big wave and were taken out to sea. And then he tried towing Konanki back to the beach. He says the last time that he saw her, she was in knee-deep water, and he asked if she was okay, but he didn't hear her response because he was vomiting up seawater. It was a nearly 4-hour interview with Dominican authorities. He was asked 50 questions, refused to answer 8 of them, including how he felt about Konanki's disappearance and if he reported their experience on the beach to authorities. Riibe's parents tell Fox News, quote, despite his full willingness to cooperate, Josh has been detained under irregular conditions and subjected to extensive questioning. This situation has raised serious concern within his family. Meanwhile, I mentioned the search continues with 300 agents in the water and on land. They're also using drones with artificial intelligence to detect objects in the water. Now, I want to show you one more thing at the Rio Republica Resort. If I can ask my photographer to zoom in on the red flag in the distance, that indicates dangerous ocean conditions. We know at this same beach back in January, 2 people were swept out to sea and drowned. Their bodies were found. Of course, that hasn't happened in this case, which, if Konanki drowned, locals say would be highly unusual. But the search for her continues with hopes that possibly she's still alive.
Okay. All right. So, Joshua Riibe under round-the-clock police surveillance in Punta Cana as a hunt for missing Pitt student draws a blank. Mega resort. American Josh Riibe is under round-the-clock surveillance. The same luxury Caribbean mega resort where missing spring breaker Sudiksha Konanki vanished 7 days ago. I'm sorry I can't say anything right now, Riibe told the Daily Mail. When we located him inside the 5-star Rio Republic. That's just 5 stars? The former high school wrestling champ, 24, was the last person to see the University of Pittsburgh student alive. He's not named a suspect nor a person of interest. What is this, an old article? Because this was 13th. He was named a person of interest. He here in the Dominican Republic and is legally free to fly back to the U.S. whenever he wants, even though they revoked his passport, I believe. But Riibe remains holed up in a private corner of the sprawling party complex, a virtual prisoner in paradise. While he continues to cooperate with police and search agencies, the somber-faced Rock Rapids, Iowa native declined to answer questions when Daily Mail encountered him walking through the lobby. Damn, they're out there searching for him. Keeping their eyes, media out there. He was walking with his father, Mike, 46 years old, and a police chaperone. He looked stressed, unshaven, but remained polite and deferential, shaking our reporter's hand before the minder stepped into cut our chat short. Okay. Josh and his dad, who flew in this week to support his son, have also been in communication with Sudiksh's distraught Indian immigrant parents. Okay, so I've been talking with the parents. He's still in the hotel. They provided the couple's friends with phone numbers so they can stay in contact over the coming days and weeks, according to our source. Joshua wants Sudiksha to be found as much as anyone here. It's a terrible situation for anyone involved, and he's cooperating fully, the source insisted. Riibe, a senior at St. Cloud State University in Minnesota, was seen on Hotel CC with his arm draped around Sudiksha and headed to the resort. We know all that stuff. He was spotted walking back 9:55. Sudiksha's gal pals reported her missing around 4 p.m. He was walking back alone. So they're saying allegedly he offered different accounts of what happened, initially claiming she called out to him from the waves to see if he was okay before stating he last saw her walking parallel to the shore in knee-deep water. Why would he leave without her? It doesn't make any sense. Alone. Riibe was described as a good kid who wouldn't hurt a fly. It would never happen. He's a good boy. Thus far, officials have no evidence to suggest he's lying or that any sort of struggle or SV took place. The adults-only Real Republica was still teeming with cops, soldiers, and officials Thursday as the hunt for the pre-med student entered the second week. Drones, divers, sniffer dogs, and hundreds of officers have been deployed in one of the biggest searches in the history of the Dominican Republic. Crazy. They say he couldn't hurt a fly. His family sticking by him. He was the last person to see Sudiksha. What happened? B. Diddy. Passport seized. Oh, no. I think they said he was trying to leave. I think that's why they seized his passport. The last person to see the university student before she vanished had his passport seized by authorities. He's a wrestler too. He is. He's a wrestler. So he could do some type of hold or something. Seized by authorities in the Dominican Republic, according to a new report. They confiscated Joshua Riibe's travel documents nearly 10 days after Konanki was last seen with the 22-year-old on the beach near the Rio Hotel Resort. I'm just trying to help them out. The ocean is a dangerous place, the Iowa native says. He's been cooperating with police. Attorneys for Riibe acknowledged that his passport was confiscated. The St. Cloud State University student is paired with police escorts permanently. He has a permanent escort and has been forced to remain at the hotel during the investigation. So they're not letting him leave. You can't go. Riibe is believed to be the last person to have seen Konanki before she went missing. The two had gone in the water during an overnight escapade, which included cuddling and kissing before they were met with rough waters. So no, he is not free to leave, Riibe's lawyer told the outlet. Riibe has been detained by police under irregular conditions, his parents Albert and Tina claimed. What do you guys think? Riibe was questioned by the nation's attorney general office, sharing details of the overnight adventure the two shared on the beach March 6 around 4 a.m. Detained, stuck. That's what happens when you got to be careful when you go to these countries, man. You might not be able to come back. Now this, where's it at? Right here. I have it somewhere. Oh, here. That's what she was wearing that night. Nita released images of Sudiksha Konanki's disappearance. Local news outlet CDN has released chilling images of a white netted beach cover-up and a pair of flip-flops similar to what Sudiksha was last seen wearing before she vanished. The haunting photos show the items left on the sun lounger, with the sandals resting in the sand beside the chair's leg. Authorities have confirmed that there were no signs of tampering with the belongings, deepening the mystery surrounding the disappearance. So that's the top that she was wearing. Those are the sandals. That was left behind. She's missing and gone. I've seen a lot of comments from people saying, never leave a friend behind. Some of the girls won't do that. They won't leave people behind. So adamant. They won't even let guys walk up and talk to their friends. No, it's not happening. But some friends are, all right, I'm okay. I'm hanging out with this guy. He's a nice guy. They let the friend go, YouTube, can you please help me out with the like button? It's almost 800 people in here, 200 likes. Hit the like button, okay? I need the help, no notifications. That's all I ask. I'm not asking for super chats, donations. Just hit the like button, please, and share if you like, okay? The other thing too, and we kind of mentioned this previously, Dominican Republic beach where Pitt student disappeared has already claimed 3 tourist lives this year and only 1 body recovered. All right, 3 European tourists at Rio Republica Hotel. Let me fix this a little bit. And Punta Cana were swept away and drowned on January 17, while a 4th tourist from Russia was hospitalized. Only 1 of the bodies was recovered. So people have gone missing here before, swept away by the waters, I guess. Drowned, drowned. Never to be found again. The Dominican Republic National Police believe the same may have happened with Konanki. Authorities think she likely drowned after going into the water following a night of partying, but her family is not satisfied with that explanation. At least 300 law enforcement personnel, including the FBI and sheriff's deputies from the co-ed's hometown in Virginia, are in their 6th day of the massive search. And so the interrogation, too, this guy was interrogated for a pretty long time. Josh Riibe evades key questions with the same answer 8 times. Let's see here. How can we verify that everything you have said corresponds to the truth? My lawyers advised me not to answer that question. I'm following their advice. Could you tell us what you commented to your friend Carter Joseph? Who's Carter? Oh, when he asked about the missing girl, Sudiksha. And the same thing, my lawyer says not to say anything. What do you think of Sudiksha's disappearance? Nothing. Says nothing. Did Sudiksha know how to swim or not? Lawyer says not to say anything. Do you remember if Sudiksha made any gesture or scream while she was in the sea? No response. Did you inform the authorities or the hotel about what happened with you and the girl on the beach? Again, no response. And that's what I think is so sus about all this is that, if you were in the water, you almost got swept away, you claim you almost drowned, you got out, and you were throwing up seawater, and you turn around and you see her, and supposedly you said she was walking by the shore. What happened in those hours? Because it was hours. That was at 4 or 5 in the morning. He's seen at 9:55 walking back from the beach. What happened? All those hours. What were you doing all those hours? Did you decide to take a nap after almost dying and not even check on the person you were kissing and cuddling? You just left it? Did you tell your friend what happened with you and the girl on the beach? My lawyers advised me not to talk. How do you feel about the situation? My lawyers advised me not to talk. Here's a little video. Dominican Republic, man. Damn. Oh, I have a little clip to play so we can, wait for people to join. Thank you for some of the likes. Check out this clip here while I
Person of interest in the search for a missing college student. After it's being reported, he refused to answer certain questions from investigators in the Dominican Republic. We are also reportedly learning what he says happened in his own words when he and Sudiksha Konanki were alone on the beach, out of sight of surveillance cameras before the sun came up, before she vanished. We're on the case presented by Law and Crime. I'm Chris Stewart.
Law and Crime.
We're now learning how Josh Riibe reportedly answered dozens of questions from investigators in the Dominican Republic, and we're also learning about the questions that he reportedly refused to answer. Dominican TV station Noticias SIN first got a copy of a 6-page transcript with 50 questions that were asked during an interview between Josh Riibe and local investigators. So let's walk through what we reportedly learned about the night that 20-year-old University of Pittsburgh student Sudiksha Konanki went missing and what it was like through the eyes of the last person to be with her. Riibe is a 22-year-old college student from Iowa who attends St. Cloud State University in Minnesota. He stayed at the same resort as Sudiksha. The report says that Riibe had 2 lawyers present for the interview, and the report also says he was interviewed as a witness to a missing persons case, not a person of interest like the Loudoun County, Virginia authorities labeled him this week, or
Oh, so in Virginia he was labeled as a missing person, but in Dominican, no? What?
not a person of interest like the Loudoun County, Virginia authorities labeled him this week, or a suspect. To be clear, no charges have been filed, and Dominican authorities have told media outlets they are treating this case as a missing persons investigation, not a criminal matter. Riibe told investigators that he and his friend met Sudiksha and her friends in the hotel lobby of the Rio Republica resort the night that she went missing. The group went to one of the bars at the resort, had some drinks, it's an all-inclusive, and then he says that someone suggested they go to the beach. And that's where we can pick up the surveillance video of those moments. The same TV station that got the transcript, Noticias SIN, first acquired this surveillance video.
Doctor said they don't label person of interest.
The video shows that Riibe has his arms around Sudiksha with their friends making their way.
Good morning. So we're outside the Rio Republica resort, which is where Sudiksha Konanki was last seen more than 2 weeks ago. I want to show before the helicopter goes out of sight, my photographer Doug, if you can pan up.
Where's that
Search teams continue their work today with aerial assets as well as teams on the ground. But I mentioned just about 100 yards behind me is where Konanki was last.
I thought we had a new live. Okay. I'm trying to hopefully get something to play later.
Way to the beach at 4:15 in the morning. Riibe says when he got to the beach, he took off his shirt, his socks, and his shoes. Then at 5:55 a.m., we see most of that group heading back to the hotel, leaving Riibe and Sudiksha behind. Riibe says that he and Sudiksha went into the water where they kissed. This is again from the transcript of his interview with authorities. He says the water reportedly was about waist high, and he says then they were hit by a wave and carried out to sea. Now this beach, it has been known to have some dangerous surf. In fact, 4 tourists who were staying at this same resort earlier this year all died in a drowning. Riibe told investigators that he and Sudiksha called for help, but since this was the early hours of the morning, there was no one there to help them or hear them. They then tried to swim, and Riibe said Sudiksha was getting tired. We translated this report that was in Spanish by Noticias SIN into English, and this is what Riibe reportedly told investigators next. Quote, "I was holding her under my arm and swimming to get her out of the water. The investigator asked, 'What happened next?' He replied, quote, 'It took me a long time to get her out. It was hard. I've been a lifeguard in pools, not in the sea. I was trying to make sure she kept breathing at all times. I couldn't breathe the whole time and swallowed a lot of water. I could have passed out several times. When I finally touched the ground on the beach, I placed her in front of me.'" Riibe then says Sudiksha got up.
What? This is even more than I heard from the other translations.
Quote, "I was holding her under my arm and swimming to get her out of the water. The investigator asked, 'What happened next?' He replied, quote, "It took me a long time to get her out. It was hard. I've been a lifeguard in pools, not in the sea. I was trying to make sure she kept breathing at all times. I couldn't breathe the whole time and swallowed a lot of water. I could have passed out several times. When I finally touched the ground on the beach, I placed her in front of me." Riibe then says Sudiksha got up to grab her belongings and walked at an angle along the beach in knee-deep water. He says he asked if she was okay as she was walking away, but he never heard her answer because at that moment he started throwing up from all the seawater he says he swallowed while swimming to safety. When he finished vomiting, he looked up and says Sudiksha was gone. Riibe then says that he felt exhausted from that swim, so he laid down on a beach chair and fell asleep.
Oh, I can't, bro. I can't. I mean, unless he's gonna try to claim he was completely drunk. I don't know why this makes me think of the Kansas City story. The fans, I forgot the guy's name. His 3 friends are there. Apparently, they're doing drugs. I don't know if they were drinking coke, weed, everything, fent, and you can't see, but whatever. I'm TikTok, but and then he's like, his friends all freeze to death outside in the backyard, and he's like, I was sleeping for 2 days because they were trying to call him. He wasn't answering his phone for 2 days. I was sleeping, even though this is a couple hours. This situation in Dominican Republic, I was sleeping. This guy said he fell asleep.
It wasn't until the sun came up the next morning and he was being bit by mosquitoes that he said...
And look at that, 2 J's, Jordan, Joshua. The Kansas City one is Jordan, and the Dominican one is Joshua. Jordan and Joshua, what's up, man?
He woke up. This again, all from this transcript with investigators. The next time we would see Riibe on the surveillance video is right here, around 9:55 a.m. as he is walking back to the hotel from the beach. You can see his shirt is off and he doesn't appear to have his shoes on. Then there's part of the report that needs a little more clarification. According to Noticias SIN, Riibe tells investigators when he returned to the hotel, he went to his friend's room to get his phone, then went to his own room to sleep. But then at the end of the interview, he says, quote, "The next day I found my things because I never picked them up, but someone had stolen my shoes and the key card to my room." He never mentions having to go to the lobby to get a new key, so there's the question there of how he was able to get into his room.
That is so weird. So I didn't know these details about this interrogation. That's so weird.
Needs a little more clarification. According to Noticias SIN, Riibe tells investigators when he returned to the hotel, he went to his friend's room to get his phone, then went to his own room to sleep. But then at the end of the interview, he says, quote, "The next day I found my things because I never picked them up, but someone had stolen my shoes and the key card to my room." He never mentions having to go to the lobby to get a new key, so there's the question there of how he was able to get into his room to then sleep. Then you have the final...
You could assume that he just didn't say it, but still weird.
A moment that he said he saw Sudiksha. He said that she went to go get her things walking at an angle in knee-high deep water before he started throwing up. Sudiksha's clothes were found on a beach chair by search crews this week. Riibe also said that Sudiksha was kissing him as they walked to the beach, and that's not something that we were able to see in the Noticias SIN surveillance video. Then comes the part of the interview where Riibe reportedly refuses to answer several questions. Investigators reportedly asked, "How can we verify what you said is true?" Riibe reportedly replied, "My lawyers advise me not to answer that question and I will rely on them." Riibe reportedly used that response to several more questions in this interview with law enforcement. The questions included, quote, "What do you think about the disappearance? Did you know the young woman? Do you remember if the young woman made any gestures or screamed while in the sea? Did you report to authorities or the hotel what happened with you and the girl on the beach? Did you tell your friend what happened with you and the girl on the beach?" All which the report says he answered, quote, "My lawyers advise me not to answer that question and I will rely on them." The report said investigators told Riibe that he did have a right not to answer questions. He also said he didn't remember how long they were on the beach for because he didn't have his phone or how long they were in the water. Riibe said
they didn't have his phone. That's interesting.
He was sleeping in his room when his friend asked if he had seen Sudiksha and he said he hadn't. and thought she had gone back to her room. It's important to note, once again, that Josh Riibe is not a suspect, and this is not a criminal investigation. And it does appear that he has been cooperative in the more than a week since Sudiksha went missing. At the time of this recording, it appears he is still in the Dominican Republic. And we've seen video like this from Noticias SIN showing Riibe with investigators. And there are pictures of him speaking with police on the beach. Interpol, the international police agency, just issued a yellow notice for Sudiksha Konanki, which is a global alert that they put out for missing persons cases. Well, ABC News earlier this week put out a report saying that Dominican authorities believe that Sudiksha Konanki drowned in the ocean. Authorities have also said that they are not ruling out any possibility. Her father, who has traveled to the Dominican Republic from their home in Virginia, has called on authorities to do more to investigate the possibility.
I wonder if we really ever will find out what happened, or will we never find out?
Of a kid.
Doesn't seem like there was much evidence of anything left behind besides he was the last person to see her. Weird.
Kidnapping or an abduction. Joining us now to talk more about this is former NYPD detective and host of the Gold Shields podcast, Tom Smith. Always great to have you on Law and Crime. Interesting to read through this transcript that was first released to this Dominican television station. You've been in many interviews before, and when lawyers are present, again, he's not a suspect. He's just a witness, according to Dominican prosecutors. What stands out to you?
Yeah, you know what stands out is the detail that he remembers certain parts, but then when he gets pressed on other parts, he kind of deflects to his lawyer, which to me is always a red flag, because if you're seriously concerned about someone you were with literally minutes or hours ago that is now missing, and you would have no involvement with it, you'd be more forthcoming. And that's not the case. He goes through just the details of the wave and pulling her out of the water, and then her kind of walking sideways, and then forgets everything else after that. That, to me, as an investigator that has done thousands of interviews, a red flag for me.
Yeah, because part of me looks and says he's in a foreign country, doesn't understand the laws there. You get a lawyer to help you, which is certainly your right. But it was like some of the I understand that there might be some civil action potentially one day down the line, if maybe he didn't report it to the authorities of what had taken place on the beach. I mean, what could be the motive for not answering some of those specific questions that were put out in this interview?
Yeah, there could be a number of reasons. One, let's go with the innocent part, that he's scared. He doesn't want to get in trouble for something he didn't do. You know, you could get very wrapped up into leading an investigation in a certain direction by just your statements of pointing the finger at you. And let's just say that's not what the case is. But the other part is being involved in one way or another. Did she meet somebody else after that? Did someone else approach them? You know, those are all factors that are part of this investigation. And him being the only person in that area, as you know, to this day that we know of, you know, his testimony, his interview, and his statements are very, very important. So if you're not involved, you would want to do everything you could and say everything you could to help the investigation, not deflect to your lawyer, which he did towards the end of this.
Yeah, and that's a good point as well, because the questions were, it was like, when did you tell your friend about what happened? I think was one of the questions, which seems like a pretty, with the X's and O's of the day and what took place. And now, too, when I look at the timeline, because originally, and a lot was through media reports, ABC News has that last week that this was going to be investigated likely as a drowning, that they had been taken away by a big wave. And then that seemed to be the point that we last saw her. Now it's this image that he lays out of he was getting sick. He, right before he threw up, looked up and saw her walking away in knee-deep water, and then that's it. If you're an investigator, how do you approach that? Because that seems to open up a whole new world of possibility of what potentially happened after.
Sure. I mean, there's a lot of things that can go into, creating a timeline. One of the first things I thought of and growing up sometimes down the Jersey Shore as a kid was, what was the tide like? What was the ocean like at that time? And you can pinpoint whether it's high tide, low tide, or whatever it might have been, the history of big waves in that area. There's some resorts, as you know, that don't have, that ocean-like feeling of a regular beach with the tide. So that's going to be part of it. And then the other interviews are going to be very important in this with, like you just mentioned, who did he talk to afterwards? What did he act like? What was his demeanor? Those are going to be all compelling factors when it comes to creating even more of a timeline with this. But it's going to be interesting going forward, especially with other interviews that are going to be conducted about how he acted, what he said, what his actions were afterwards.
One other piece, I'd love to get your thoughts on this because I know people are circling it as part of the transcript that's been released through these media reports, is the fact he says he went to his room and went to sleep, but then later says that his key card had gotten stolen from the room. Like that to me is like weird. Something there. Yeah. There needs to be more clarification. And again, this is a missing persons case, but just as a story's being laid out, how do you get into your room if you don't have your key card? And then he doesn't mention like going to a hotel lobby like everybody has in the past when you lose your room key.
Right. And that goes into, my way of thinking with this is we've had this conversation on your show with other cases. When crimes are committed, not saying he is, but just generally, when situations occur and crimes are committed, to give your initial alibi of what happened sometimes is very easy. You come up with a story, you stick to it. There's no one else around, so there's no one to dispute it. But then when you start getting questioned about actions that take place afterwards, you're not prepared for those questions. And that's when people get tied up with their statements
tornado
of what
warnings
happened
over the
after
weekend,
events,
potentially
when they start to get questioned, because people can't anticipate detectives questioning or investigators questions, when they're kind of thinking of their alibi. And that might be the case here. And that's why follow-up interviews are going to be very, very important with this. Even if his lawyer's there, having to lay out what you think you have, and maybe some additional evidence that you can throw at him to see how he reacts to it.
I also wonder too, because he talks about that she went to go get her things and she was in knee-high water, but then her clothes were found on the beach. That to me is just something that's I found that surprising. I mean, you're the former detective. I'm just kind of like sitting back and like reading this, and it's like that's interesting because they found this piece of clothing, and then I also think of he goes and falls asleep on the beach, where that was it sounded like a pretty traumatic event that he had gone through, having to drag her out of.
I know, bro. I mean, oh my God, if you really pulled her, dragged her. Why would she go back into the water and go for a walk too, though? Because I thought he said after he pulled her out and saved her, that she went back for a walk. All right, thank you for saving my life. You throwing up? Okay, I'm just going to go for a walk. Back into the water that almost killed both of us? What?
Out of the water. I mean, it sounds like it was a near-death experience. Yeah. And then it's kind of like, well, I'm just going to fall asleep on the beach and then go inside.
You're absolutely right. And that's what I mean by putting actions, into words and theories into what you're hearing from a witness or someone that might have been involved in something. Think about, my view of it is he is so key on the particulars of her being out of the water. That is a key part in all his statements. We got out of the water. She was walking in the water. She went to get her things. So his initial thought is, I have to make it, she's got to be out of the water. So I can assume she's okay, so I can go do what I want. And that might not be the case with this. And that's why, follow-ups and timelines and other people's accounts of how he was afterwards. We don't know if all that is true, that he went back to his room and all that. And other people's accounts of when they saw him and what's going to be said afterwards are going to be a key part in this investigation. This is a difficult one. This is really tough because of just two people being in a secluded place by themselves, and one of them's missing, and one of them gets to tell a story.
I think, too, he's still in the Dominican Republic, so he's been cooperative to the point that he hasn't gone home, which, I think there would be a concern of how that would look if he was to leave the country. But, I mean, at this point, given the statements he's given, if you're the Dominican authorities, and I know this might be more Dominican law, I mean, would he theoretically be free to go home? I mean, I'm sure at this point it's been more than a week since she went missing, like his spring break would have been done by now.
Yeah, I would think so. Not knowing Dominican law, but I would think so because, a person of interest doesn't mean suspect. It just means that person has an interest in the investigation because he was the last one seen with her. And that's a big distinction between suspect and just person of interest. So if it's still at that level, I don't see any reason why he wouldn't be free to go, on his own.
Residents. Well,
what are your thoughts on
the
the
ACLU,
Loudoun County, Virginia sheriff being the one to put out person of interest? I know they've sent deputies to help, and she's from the Washington, D.C. area. Because I think on one hand, while there's a lot of questions about his timeline and his story that he's been laying out, at the same time, it's a missing persons case. The Dominican authorities who were there are calling him a witness, but then you have the sheriff that puts out person of interest and clarified it wasn't a suspect. But I just feel like when you say person of interest, suddenly everybody's, your ears perk up and you start wondering if there's more going on here.
Absolutely right. And you got to be really careful with that, and that may have been a slip up or whatever it might have been. But when you start labeling people that are part of an investigation, you have to be very careful of what you're saying and how you're titling them. We've seen many times that backfires. Sometimes it plays out and it goes in another direction, but a lot of times it backfires and you end up, facing a lawsuit or something like that. So anyone on any law enforcement level is always very careful on how you're labeling witnesses or people of interest or suspects.
Where does this investigation go from here? He's not a suspect. He's considered a witness, maybe gave some inconsistent statements, and maybe he's just a bad witness. They were drinking that night. He doesn't remember things, and he's trying to piece together what happened. And if that's the case, and your authorities, you have this missing girl, and the last thing was seen was her just kind of walking off into the darkness, what do you do?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see if the FBI gets involved or any role they may have in this, because it is a U.S. citizen missing in another country. So they do have the authority to at least look into it or start a preliminary investigation and be part of the information sharing that's going on there to see if they can have any role in that. And if they do, what is that going to be? Are they going to start interviewing people or re-interviewing people? Visit the area and things like that. So it's going to be interesting to see how this progresses and if they do have an interest or a role in this going forward.
In your experience with the NYPD, have you been part of international investigations like this? I mean, I know there's a huge, many different Caribbean nations in New York City have populations where you worked.
Well, when I was in the Joint Terrorism Task Force, I ran a lot of investigations overseas with other governments and other security agencies. And for the most part, I can say we got along very well and the information sharing was always good. And I don't see any reason this wouldn't be as well. Sometimes they're guarded in what they say and it takes a little longer to get information from certain countries, sure, because they have to, keep their interests in mind as well with tourism and not putting out that there's a big problem when it comes to things like this. So I understand that part, but for my experience working overseas in other countries, I've always had a good experience with security agencies or other governments sharing information.
From what we were able to see, this was about a 50-question interview, 6 pages. All we've been able to look at is the media reports that are coming out from those who have the transcript. But of the questions that were asked, what do you make of how prosecutors and law enforcement are approaching the questions to Josh Riibe?
Yeah, I think it was methodical. I think you just go step by step in where you think it started, what you were aware of happening, and then a lot of your follow-up questions go by and are based on the answers. So you could have a lot of things written down as far as questions that you want to ask, but depending on the answer is going to fuel your next question. So I think the questions just kind of lined up with what they know at this moment and kind of leave an open door into follow-up questioning and interviews with any other information they may gather from other people or, other surveillance videos or whatever it may be to have a follow-up interview with him.
Typically, what is the strategy that, just in your experience and being on the other side of the table, what the strategy is of an attorney to not have their client answer a question? Because at least from the peanut gallery, you see it and you're like, that's suspicious, but why would they not have him answer certain questions?
Well, whatever the case is, the attorney has to represent his client, whether you like it or not, that's his job. So if a question get asked that they hadn't gotten over, or hadn't touched on, they're going to kind of push it to the side. Oh, we're not going to answer that until the attorney understands what the answer is going to be. Most of the time, a lot of those answers, the attorney already knew what he was going to say. So if you get a question that you aren't prepared for, you're not going to have your client answer it until you speak to them and get the answer yourself before he starts talking to investigators. That's pretty common.
How long could this investigation go? I mean, as far as the attention, the FBI being involved, U.S. authorities being involved, searching a beach, looking, if she is not found, whether it's her washing ashore or maybe she's still alive and something happened that would explain everything that we have going on. But if we're still kind of in this place where we don't know where she is, there's not a lot of evidence that's coming out. The person of interest appears to, maybe he's just a bad witness, doesn't remember what happened after she left. And we're kind of still in this place. How long could this go for?
Yeah, it could just stay open. It could stay an active investigation because of what it is, or it could just be an accident. It could be a missing persons that is just a missing persons with no end time to it. It all depends on follow-up things that go on with the investigation of, is there just a flat-out dead end in this? Is there no criminal activity that's being found that can lead to a furtherance of an investigation? Or is it simply an accident and she drowned and is in the ocean? Any of those are possible, but there's no need to quote unquote just close the case because of the time that it's open. It could stay theoretically open for a very, very long time.
I know Interpol has put out, it calls it a yellow notice, which is for missing people. What's your experience with Interpol when you've dealt with them and what those type of notices can mean for investigations like this?
Yeah, we worked with them quite often. There's different colors of different notices depending on what it is you're looking for, red, blue, yellow. And all that is sort of an alert, kind of a be on the lookout for. Airports are notified, bus terminal, anything to do with international.
Yeah, I wonder if this could go cold or unsolved. That would be really, really unfortunate. I will set this video to, let me see here, about Natalie Holloway's private investigator. I'm also trying to see if they do an official update. I don't see anything yet, though. Let me see. No, okay. This here.
Now for what's trending in true crime, our coverage continues of the spring break
I like this lady from Court TV.
Now for what's trending in true crime, our coverage continues, and it's on her high school senior trip in Aruba.
Natalie Holloway. A lot of people mention Natalie Holloway when talking about this case, and Jordan van der Sloot, he's the one that was arrested for her murder, but her body was never found, I believe. Natalie Holloway.
You'll recall she vanished on her high school senior trip in Aruba 20 years ago. Crime scene investigator Cheryl McCollum talked with us about the similarities in the two cases on Wednesday's show.
This sounds so much like Natalie Holloway. You've got a young girl on spring break surrounded by friends. She gets separated from the group with somebody that she met at a hotel in that country. And then she disappears. And then that person starts making statements that cannot be true.
So let's take a look at the striking similarities. Sudiksha is 20. Natalie was 18. Sudiksha was last seen March 6th in Punta Cana. Natalie was reported missing May 30th, 2005 in Aruba. Sudiksha is still considered missing this morning. Sadly, Natalie was murdered by Joran van der Sloot, a resident of Aruba. I'm so happy to have our next guest here in the studio with me. He's a private investigator, best known for his work on Natalie Holloway's case. TJ Ward, back on the show with us. TJ, great to see you.
Thank you very much.
I'm sorry it's under these circumstances. A missing young lady from...
Oh, and thank you on TikTok for the people that sent some love over there. DK, Peaches, TNT, K-Toes, Laura, Carol, Baby Girl, Swam. Thank you.
Pitt. When you heard about Sudiksha's case, did you think what so many of us in the true crime community thought, that, oh my gosh, this gives us flashbacks to Natalie's disappearance?
Absolutely. And I went a step further. I called the mother 6 days ago. She was with the sheriff in Virginia. I gave her all my information. Matter of fact, I texted her all my information. I said, please call me. I'll help you set up a GoFundMe. Get me there to help you. I said, I'm very familiar with these type cases and with doing the disappearance of Natalie Holloway. Get me there and to help you.
Yes. What did she say, TJ? Did she respond?
She didn't. I think she's so overwhelmed and taken about her daughter missing.
Sure.
Maybe she didn't. But I mean, it's out there. I still want to continue to help her. I want to be there for her. There are things that have to be done. I'm receiving calls from people in the Dominican Republic telling me what's going on.
Wow. What are they saying, TJ?
Well, I've got 2 to call back that send me emails last night that want to talk to me and tell me what they think, what transpired there. We know that this country has been put on notice by the United States as a travel advisory with this. There's problems. There's problems in this country with rape, robberies, people being taken, kidnappings. So we have to take all that in consideration. And the goodness is that we got on this case very quickly, and we need to get there soon. I mean, I spent 18 years trying to get Iran back.
So the travel advisory, from what I'm looking at from the government website, is level 2, exercise increased caution. It says violent crime, including armed robbery, homicide, SA, is a concern throughout the Dominican Republic. The developmental of a professional tourist police corps institution, so on and so forth. Be aware of your surroundings. Do not physically resist any attempted robbery. Do not show signs of wealth, such as wearing expensive watches or jewelry. I remember, I haven't been there in Dominican Republic in a long time. My family's from there. When I used to go, I didn't want to stay more than a week. I was ready to get the hell out of there. It's a nice, of course, they have beautiful places, but I would visit family at that place that I'd want to be more than a week. And when I get off the airport, it's just people bum rushing. It's just too much, man. I don't want to deal with that shit. Don't get away from me. But they look at you and they can tell. I was born here, but I don't know my ethnicity, I guess, Dominican or Latino, whatever you want to call it. My family's from there. But even when I would go over there, gringo, hey, gringo, hey, gringo, because they just see what you're wearing and stuff. The hell off me before I end up missing or disappeared or some shit. Don't touch me.
Vandersloot
Just don't
and
know.
Deepak and Satish and following up with them, using the voice analysis on them. I know they weren't telling the truth. So finally, the end result, 18 years later, we get a little bit of the truth that came out of Joran Vandersloot's mouth for a deal to get his time here in the U.S. And Beth Holloway was very good about getting that done, along with Greta. And they went and convinced for them to bring him here to the U.S. and face charges for the extortion, which should have happened in 2010 when he was given $25,000 with the FBI on film with Natalie's attorney, and it didn't happen. And then, of course, he went to Peru with Stephanie Flores, and she found out about this, and he killed her.
Right.
So he's got his 28 years he spent in a Peruvian prison, and then he's going to have to spend his 20 years here in Alabama in a federal system.
Horrific crimes Joran Vandersloot committed.
Yes.
Tell me, in the investigation of Natalie Holloway's case, and I actually went back and pulled up some videos of you being interviewed. You were all over the media, really became very well known, back then for this case, TJ. And there was always speculation that, could she have drowned? And it seems that here in Sudiksha's case, that was the initial thought of all those investigators in the Dominican Republic. This is a drowning. This is a drowning. What do you think happened to Sudiksha?
I don't think it was a drowning.
Ooh.
I don't, and I know that the sheriff in Virginia agrees with that also.
Oh, so maybe that's why Virginia's saying person of interest. But it seems like the Dominican authorities are not saying person of interest and not saying he's a suspect or anything. But supposedly he is around the clock surveillance, and they've confiscated his passport.
This was not a drowning. Something transpired. She may be in the water, but she didn't do it on her own and drowned. What bothers me, this individual that was with her and last seen, who's now a person of interest, according to the federal government and also the sheriff in Virginia, I don't believe that the local law enforcement in the Dominican Republic want to believe that, and I know that because of tourism. They have the same thing that happened in Aruba. They had to hire somebody because of the tourism, and we don't want countries to have people being robbed, murdered, kidnapped, and all in countries when they go to visit. But the problem is with younger people. They think they got this satisfaction, they're going to be able to go party and drink and be on their own and so on. They're not thinking about the safety of what could transpire while they're there.
Right.
So that's the case right here. And what's happened, that happened with Natalie Holloway. She didn't know who she was with or what she was with. And look what the end result is. Right. So we're back to square one. And this reminded me so much when I saw the beach and the water and person of interest and somebody missing. It's the same scenario 18 years.
It really is, TJ. It's eerie, eerily similar. These beautiful young ladies with their whole lives ahead of them. In Sudiksha's case, regarding that person of interest, Joshua Riibe, do you think he is where investigators should place their primary focus?
The last person that was with her was him. So they have to target on him and interview him, and the story's changed already 3 or 4 times, and that's not good for him. And so if he is so-called the person of interest right now, a goodness is that the FBI's there now to help and assist the Dominican Republic law enforcement.
Right.
They have the experience, and they've got people there looking and trying to help them and get them where they need to be with this investigation.
Right.
I'm gracious that they're there. They did the same thing in Aruba. I met with them. I met with the Aruban authorities, with the FBI, and the goodness of them being there, it's going to be helpful maybe now and later down the road if this guy is implicated or what they need to get new information out of him. If he knows something, he needs to talk. It bothers me that he was on the beach with her that early in the morning, and before she was reported missing was hours later. And that just doesn't, that's not a good part of the investigation. I've been in law enforcement for 47 years, and I know that that's a key right there.
Yes. Yes, TJ. Tell me, do you still stay in touch with Natalie Holloway's family? And I'm just wondering if you may be connecting with them over this, because certainly they watch the news, and I'm sure something like this could be very triggering.
I speak to Dave Holloway every week.
You do?
Every week.
Wow.
Dave and I are very good friends now. You know, we did a TV show in 2017, The Disappearance of Natalie Holloway. Dave and I spent lots of time together, and we've become very good friends. So we have.
You'll be talking about Sudiksha's
I talked
case.
to him 2 days ago. Yes, and about this.
I'm sure his heart is breaking. Well, please tell Dave Holloway and tell him to pass it along to the whole family that we still think of his beautiful daughter, and she's still remembered, and someone we're always going to remember here at Court TV.
There are still things coming up about the Aruba case, and that's being looked at that we know about. Yes.
Oh, we're going to have you back, TJ, to talk about that another day. We're out of time for today, but let's get a date on the calendar and you can update us. I know our viewers would love to hear it. TJ Ward, you can follow him on social media. I hope you get a call back, and I hope they bring you in to get on the ground there.
I hope the family calls me. I insist I will help them raise the money they need for us to go there. And but I may reach back out to the mother again and tell her, I'm sure she knows by now that I'm interested. I'm getting calls. I'm getting information
Keep us
about.
Posted.
Yes.
Yeah, TJ Ward, you're awesome. Thank you so much for this.
Okay. So yeah, definitely the situation is odd. I was trying to see if they did like a live update on this too, but I haven't seen them do one yet. It's weird. Let's see something. Sudiksha. No, I don't see anything. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if they'll ever actually come to a resolution with this. I wonder. Final Venmo payments. And I think I mentioned this earlier in the stream, that there was some supposed final Venmo payment. So she made 2 payments. Sudiksha Konanki made 2 payments on the app hours before her disappearance. Has taken a troubling turn as Venmo transactions highlight her final moments. So we know the whole story. We'll skip past that. The first payment was made at 2:54 p.m. Was sent to an unnamed new user with a sailboat emoji as its description. This was followed by a second transaction at 3:38 p.m., this time to one of Konanki's friends, Anya Chilakamari, with the description Coco Bongo, a well-known nightclub in the area. Authorities have found no indication of wrongdoing on Chilakamari's part. Konanki is a pre-med student from Virginia. Okay. So these are the 2 transactions. I guess there's no amount. I was wondering what the amount is. I guess they don't show the amount on Venmo. Venmo is one of my least pay platforms. I can't stand that. It's just so for me, awkward and bulky, and I don't know. I don't know anybody that really uses it. Well, I've rarely ever used it, but I have it. But it's just, I don't know. Crazy. Let me see if there's got anything else here. Sudiksha Konanki. No, okay. Maybe that's it then. Let's see. Spring break vacation. Yeah, I think we covered everything. All the updates so far. You use it? You love Venmo? Oh my God. Mary says, I believe she drowned drunk at 4 a.m. in rough waters. This happens in broad daylight. Yeah, it does happen in broad daylight. Logically, she would be exhausted. She wouldn't go back in. Yeah, DK on TikTok. I don't understand why she would go back in. That makes no sense to me. Just scanning the comments real quick. Do you think DR knows more than and they haven't said? I think it's possible they know more. I mean, I think they always know more. They might know more and not have enough to charge anything or convict anything or I don't know. I also sometimes said too, I think that sometimes don't want the bad publicity. I forgot to show this too. Legacy on Twitter says, or X, the fact that Sudiksha's clothing was left behind strongly suggests, in my opinion, that she may have never made it out the water at all. Joshua either doesn't remember that she drowned, is embellishing details to make himself look like a hero, or has no involvement but refuses to admit she drowned by accident because it would reflect poorly on him. Oh, this is them. Looks like at the bar. Is that supposed to be him? Riibe? Damn, who's that? It lit as hell. What did it do? Oh. Vomiting? Mm. Damn. Tell me you got what I want, something to satisfy me. What's up, missy, also the sea, bye bye. Baby, you got what I want. Okay, sorry. All right, I guess that's it for now. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me. Thank you for hanging out. Thank you for hanging out. I had a lot of comments too on yesterday's live with Gene Hackman. And there were some people that said, man, some people said, you know, some kids, they're just horrible to their parents. Because some people were saying those kids never even checked up on Gene. So maybe that's why they didn't get no money. Let me see, Gene Hackman. No money. Yeah, I got a lot of comments on that video. I still got to try to reply to some. I lived with my dad to be 97 and my stepmom, who took care of him, passed away at 81. She did everything for him. We never thought he would outlive her, but she got liver cancer and was getting treatment. And the treatment, unfortunately, I hate to say, killed her faster. And she was alone in the back bedroom. My dad thought she was just sleeping. If it wasn't for her son to have found her, I think she would have passed away in their house and nobody would have known for at least a couple of days. I got a lot of comments. There was a few people saying, why wouldn't his parents call his kids call him every single day? 95 years old. A lot of comments yesterday. If you missed that, check it out, that live stream from yesterday. But all right, I'm going to get off for now, take a little break. I am feeling a little hungry. I'm still holding, haven't eaten. This is day 2 of fasting, water fasting. I'm ready to eat. All right, guys, love you. Take care. Bye. Hit like, subscribe on the way out. Please subscribe if you're not subscribed. 50K.